My boyfriend thinks I'm disgusting for having periods and refuses to touch me or even have sexy time. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 3 months. We met on a dating app. He works in financing and I own my own business. He's 28 and I'm 22, but he is so not mature. When we first met, he came across as a really intelligent guy. After 6 dates, he asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend and I said yes. I did feel like he was rushing into it a little bit, and I decided to take the risk. A few days after he asked me to be his girlfriend, I mentioned to him that I was gonna get off the pill. I was having a lot of hormonal problems and the pill was probably causing it, and I knew that this was gonna make my periods really heavy again. Well, when I said this to him, he said, wow, that's disgusting. Then he said, my ex never had periods because she was always on the pill. Isn't that impossible? He was just lying to make me feel bad. And I literally sat there in the restaurant explaining to him why periods happen and why they are important. At the end of the conversation, he said it was still gross and that he wouldn't want to touch me when I was on it in case he got blood on him. Then he brought up his ex again. He said that she was always so clean. I got up from the table and I walked away. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend told me I'm disgusting for getting my period and he refuses to touch me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Listen to me on Instagram. The following day, he called me and asked me if I still had my period. I told him no, and he said, okay, then I can come over. When he came over to my apartment, I asked him what was his problem with periods. He told me that it was disgusting and that women should try to get rid of them. Then he started insisting on me taking the pill again so that I could stop having periods. I told him he had no right over my body and that I would do whatever I wanted. He ended up going home and we didn't speak for a few days. He finally calls me and tells me that he's sorry for calling me disgusting. But this time I actually had my period. So when he came over, I wanted to test him. I kissed him and told him that I wanted to do it. Then he said, okay. I told him I had to go to the bathroom to remove my pad. Then he said, are you for real? That's so gross. Why would you invite me over knowing that you have your period? Then he said that he wouldn't come near me with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, this 28-year-old man said that. Then he told me that I probably smell really bad down there and that I should probably go take a shower right away. I didn't even know what to say to him. I opened my front door and I stood there. And he left. An hour later, he posts on his story that he's at a club with his friends. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend says that I'm disgusting for getting periods and he refuses to touch me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. He posted a story that he was at a club. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, so I didn't ask him anything. A few hours later, I check his story again, and he's partying with all these random girls at the club. I asked him who they were, and he said they were just girls that he met at the club. I was so angry, I just turned off my phone. At 2 in the morning, he shows up to my apartment drunk. He actually apologized, but ended up falling asleep on my couch. The next day, I thanked him for apologizing, and he said, what apology? I said, you came over last night and apologized. He said, no, I didn't. I would never have done that. I still think your periods are gross. I started to cry and he told me that I was overreacting. For the past 3 months, it's been like this. Every time I'm on my period, he refuses to even hang out with me. I told him a few weeks ago that I needed him to change because I needed his support when I had my period. He told me that he just couldn't do it. So I took to Instagram and got in contact with his ex. And I asked her if it was really true that she never got periods. She told me no, that it wasn't true and that he was just disgusted with periods in general. She told me that I shouldn't take it personally and that he also made her life a living hell whenever she got her period. Then she told me that he cheated on her several times when she had her period. Apparently it was just like a hall pass for him. So now I'm thinking about breaking up with him. When I'm not on my periods, we have a great time. But I want someone who will love me and support me no matter what. What should I do?
Am I wrong for telling my sister not to name her daughter Chewbacca? My 24 female, sister 28 female found out she was pregnant 5 months ago. Recently, she and her husband 31 male announced that they were having a girl and finally decided on a baby name, Chewbacca. I was more than a bit shocked, even more so when I found out that the name was the product of a long discussion and compromise between them. My sister wanted to name their daughter after our late grandmother Rebecca. Brother-in-law, who's obsessed with Star Wars, wanted to use a name from the movies. Before they knew they were having a girl, he wanted a son to name Chewie, which I still think is a bit odd, but it's not unheard of, so whatever. The problem is that he got attached to the name. Even after they found out they were having a girl, he didn't want to look for a female or gender-neutral Star Wars name. He still wanted Chewie. This is where it gets dumb. After arguing over it for a while, debating using one as a middle name, and sister pushing brother-in-law to choose a different name from the series, they somehow decided the best compromise would be just to mash the names together. When I asked my sister why she would agree to something so stupid, she got annoyed and told me that it's not like anyone would ever call her that. They'll use her nickname, Becca. I told her not to name her daughter Chewbacca and that she'll probably get bullied for having a name that sounds like a dog's name. She got mad and said her daughter is not a dog, which, obviously, and that what she named her child was none of my business. She asked me to leave if I was just going to badmouth her daughter. I told her I wasn't. I was just concerned about my niece getting bullied for having a stupid name. I think I did the right thing bringing up my concerns, but when I got home that night, I got a call from my mom telling me to drop it. She didn't like the name either, but said it wasn't our business and that my sister was right about just calling her Becca. I think both my mom and sister think the whole nickname thing is a clever way of getting around brother-in-law to get the name they actually want. But what if he insists on his side of the family using the nickname Chewy? But I don't know, maybe the Becca thing will work? I know I'm sticking my nose in where it isn't wanted, but is it a bad thing to bring up the future problems of having the name Chewbacca, or am I really overstepping?
Toxic best friend story time. My best friend's name was Jessica, and she was from Pennsylvania, and she was from a broken home. And when she met my mom, she absolutely loved my mom, and we became fast friends really quick. She always wanted to come over to my house, and when I didn't want her to come over for some reason because I wanted to be with my family, she would get really upset. She became really possessive over me with my family and other people at school, so I basically couldn't have any other friends except for her. And when she would see me hang out with people, she would start making up rumors and accuse me of having talked bad about other people. Jessica was also really promiscuous, but I never judged her for it. I supported her in whatever she wanted to do, like hang out with older boys, like much older boys. And one day she came to me and said that she was pregnant and that she was planning on having an abortion. 2 months later, she came out and said this. Part 2 of Toxic Best Friend. TikTok deleted this, don't know why. So my best friend comes to my house having had 2 abortions in 1 month at this point. And she was upset, she was crying, she felt sick, she had nausea. I gave her medication like ibuprofen or something. I didn't know what to do. I was a 13-year-old child. And then she told me that she was in love with me and that she didn't know what she would do if I didn't love her the same way back. At this point, my hands were shaking, my knees were shaking. I didn't know how to help her. The thought of her being sick at my house and her family not knowing was making me feel horrible. The fact that I hadn't told my mom at that point made me feel horrible. So I went and I told my mom. She called her family right away, and they came to pick her up. They took her to the hospital right away. My mom and I were checking on her every single day during the time that she was in the hospital, calling, finding out how she was. The next week, okay, so people were judging me in the last video because I snitched, but I was 13, you guys. What would you do if you were 13 and your friend was sick in your house? Toxic best friend story time, part 3. So this week at school was horrible. I show up and there are so many things written on my locker. Nobody knew. The principal had it all cleaned up. The boys were being really aggressive with me, writing me letters, threatening letters. One boy tried to push me up against the wall and tried to kiss me. I didn't let him, but that was that first time that had happened. And I had already been bullied a lot at this point, so I wasn't too surprised, but I was like, why would she be doing this after telling me that she loved me? Right. It also didn't help that the principal made it a point to come to my class and interrogate everyone about the locker situation. No one spoke, but it made me even more of a target. I was already so bullied at this point. I was dying. And I never really saw her after that. Her parents flew her back to Pennsylvania because this all happened in Nicaragua. All I know is that she's a stripper now, and she still tries to contact me on Instagram, and my brother's on social media. They don't pay attention to her, and I know that she's had trouble.
Story time about how my boyfriend and I got robbed for over $3,000. And I know someone's about to be like, $3,000 isn't even a lot of money. We were both teenagers and both saved up a year's worth of paychecks for this, so it was a lot of money to us. So my boyfriend and I were looking for a car that we could use for about a year or so, and we found this one guy on Facebook. And the car looked too good for the price that he was selling it at, but I got in contact, asked him if he would meet me somewhere, and then he started being super sketchy. He was like, well, I still have to do some work on it, so can you guys come to my house? So we drove an hour away to his place, and we pull up to this apartment, and we drive around a few times, and the car is nowhere to be seen. So he meets us outside, we go in his house, super nice, offered us drinks and everything, and then he goes, okay, can I have the money now? And we're like, well, we want to see the car. And he goes, you guys can see the car after you give me the money, I just don't want to get robbed. So we give him the money, and he goes to the back to count it, like for part 2. Part 2 on my boyfriend and I getting robbed. So like I said, we gave him the money and he said he had to go to the back to count it. So I look over at my boyfriend and he's shaking his head because we already knew what was going on at this point. And as soon as I hear footsteps, I turn my head and this guy is standing there with a gun pointed in between my boyfriend and I's heads and a baseball bat in the other hand. And then he goes, okay, you guys can get the fuck out of my house now. Before we leave his house, my boyfriend's like, bro, can I at least get the money back? And of course the guy says no. So then I called the cops. And my boyfriend didn't want me to call the cops because he was like, I want to handle it my own way. But I didn't care. That was money that we worked hard for. So I got on the phone with the police. We went down to the police station. We made our statements and everything like that. And then we go back like I think a week later. and they show us a picture and they're like, oh, is this him? Well, apparently this guy had a lot of gun charges and everything like that. So he went to jail and had to do community service, like for part 3. Part 3 on my boyfriend and I getting robbed. So like I said, they said that he had a lot of gun charges, and so he went to jail. And I think he was only in there for 6 months because apparently he was only a teenager. So after he got out, it was like time for him to start paying us back. And I was so happy that I didn't let my boyfriend handle it his own way. I feel like this was the best revenge or whatever. He had to spend that whole summer doing community service to pay us back. And it's not like a fine where you can just pay that money back. Like, you actually have to do community service for that money. Or I'm pretty sure that's what the cops told us. But the funniest thing is we actually saw him walking in the mall with his dad whenever we got one of the paychecks, because we went shopping with it, and we were walking right behind him, and my boyfriend wanted to say something, and I was like, no, we already got the money back, like, let's not do that.